Hey guys, how's it going? Here we have a super classic hand from back in the days. As you can see, with our legend Phil Ivey and Andrew Feldman. And we want to talk about a super interesting spot that comes up. So let's see.
Yeah, let's check it out. This is almost 10 years old, I think, this hand. So pretty interesting. It was at the Full Tilt cash game. I think they used to have those in London, and this is like a really out of the box play. So let's just discuss it here and see what we can gauge.
Yeah. So Andrew has King, Queen, and Diamonds. Pretty nice hand.
Yeah, so he opens it up. I think the blinds were like 3-6 or 4-8, I believe. He opens to 2,000. I know the starting stacks were Feldman had about 100,000 and Ivy had about 120. So yeah, I think the 2K open was just like a 2.2x or 2.5x if it was 4-8. Doesn't really matter either way. But yeah, he opens the King Queen suited, and then Ivy decides to 3-bet with the Queen 4 offsuit on the button here. So pretty interesting. What do you think of this play so far?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's so far off, right? So in general, you want to thread hands with playability, hands that have good equity and within calling range. And of course, Queen 4 offsuit is just not connected at all. It's not a suited hand. It's probably one of the worst hands you can throw it there because you have so many better hands you can throw it. It's not that he has no better hands, right? He has like Queen Jack, Queen 10, Queen 9, even Queen 8 suited. It's definitely way better through it than Queen 4 offsuit. It's just super out of line and shows how the game's played back in the days, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's more of a. They even talk about it in the stream. It's more about, I guess, Ivy senses that maybe Feldman's a weaker player. I guess they played before, and Feldman was playing pretty tight. So obviously, like Ivy's just taking the spot where he figures, okay, I'm on the button. This guy opened. I think he's weak, so I'm basically going to take like. I mean, this is almost like any two cards. This is like way down in your range. You know what I mean? Like you have worse shit, maybe stuff like 9-2 off, but this hand, like you said, is just so bad, right? It's not connected. It's offsuit, and I think even if Ivy has this read, that's fine. Obviously, if you think you're a better player, but I think, and again, I mean, we're obviously just speculating. Ivy's a great player. We're not saying he's a terrible player, but we're trying to break this hand down kind of in a vacuum in today's standard. If you're doing this in today's game, say online or something, right? Just how bad these plays are. It's just kind of funny. But the fact that he does this, you got to watch out because there's still the blinds, right? Even if you think Feldman's weak, the blinds are going to wake up with a decent hand, 5-10% of the time, right, where they can 4-bet you. So you still have two players to get through. And then, yeah, as we say, it's just such a weak hand. So
there's nothing you can do when someone 4-bets.
Yeah.
And the other problem is when Feldman goes ahead and 4-bets, we also have to overfold because we're 3-betting so much junk from our range that we always have to overfold. And like you mentioned, we have just so many better hands to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So Feldman calls the 5K, which I think is pretty standard, especially if you think Ivy's being wide here. You could even make a case for 4-betting. It's a pretty nice hand to 4-bet as a bluff. But obviously electing a call seems fine. And
yeah, I really like calling.
You see a flop here, 10-10-5, sorry, 5-5-10. And let's see. Feldman checks over to Ivy in a minute here. So what do you think Ivy should be doing here once Feldman checks?
Yeah, I think Ivy can bet really wide on this board texture. I think Ivy should just bet between 5 and 7K, something like this.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a board where you can bet pretty frequently. I mean, as far as sizing, I think you could use number sizing smaller. You could go bigger on this board too, but I assume he's probably going to be betting like his full range, so you might as well just use a small size here. And, his hand, even though he has a total junk hand, this board's actually not the worst for him, I guess, because Feldman will have a lot of air, and he does have at least he's got one overcard and he's got the backdoor clubs. So, I mean, I assume he's just going to bet this always.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think Feldman is definitely check folding a large portion from his range on the board texture because the board is so unconnected that he just has to fold a lot of middling type hands when he has nothing.
Yeah, for sure. So Ivy does go ahead and bet, I guess about half pot there. Or no, he bet 11K actually into
15.
About 15, yeah. So pretty big bet, which I think at optimal, big bets do get used on these low paired boards in position. But I think if you're betting your entire range, you don't want to be doing that, which obviously Ivy apparently is when he bets a hand like this. And now back on Feldman. So what do you think now in his shoes?
Yeah, I think Feldman has a pretty nice hand to go ahead and check fold because he has king queen offsuit, no backdoor flush draw, no nothing, king high. So yeah, there's not too much you can do in those situations. With no draws, you just have to give it to the player that has position.
Yeah, for sure. Not much you can do, especially versus bigger sizing, right? Versus smaller sizing, you can potentially, do some check raising, do some floating. Not really necessarily with this hand, but obviously, yeah, versus the bigger sizing, you're really just handcuffed. And but obviously Feldman has different plans here, so he's thinking about it. And yeah, I mean, you can kind of see him mulling it over here. I think he'd been bullied by Ivey, obviously, in past shows too, so he's probably just thinking, this is my chance to make my move.
Yeah, not this time.
Yeah, who knows what Ivey's thinking? He's just doesn't give a shit. But yeah, so Feldman actually does, in fact, coming up here, goes for the check raise. We'll skip ahead here. Yeah, so there it is. Feldman check raises to 28-5. So pretty interesting play. I mean, it's not like horrific, I don't think. He does have 2 overs. But I think if you're going to be check raising there, you want to at least have like 1 club in your hand or something like king, queen of spades, right? You want to have some backdoor flush draw equity. But as far as the blockers go, it's not bad. I mean, he blocks kings and queens. He blocks like king 10 suited, queen 10 suited. So yeah.
Yeah, the problem is definitely the big sizing and the board texture and the preflop sizing preflop. So Feldman probably never has a 5. In his range, so maybe occasionally 5-6 suited, but even this hand is probably close, and I really doubt that he would check raise a hand like king 10, ace 10 on this board texture against the really, really big sizing from Ivey. And there's a problem, right, that he has rarely a value hand, so you can maybe check raise a few club draws, but it's just not necessary to check raise the random junk like king queen offsuit with no club at all. So even when a club comes on the turn, he always has to shut down. And this just shows you how many better hands you have in your range to bluff check raise a board texture when you want to establish a bluff check raising range.
Yeah, for sure. Because as you said, for his value range, he doesn't really have any 5x. He's basically the value hands he's doing this with are probably just like hands like ace 10, pocket jacks. Maybe he has queens occasionally that just want to check raise and then call it off, right? But it's really pretty narrow range.
Yeah, maybe aces once in a while.
Yeah, he could have that too. So yeah, pretty.
But even with those hands, right, he mainly will or should opt for a check call. So yeah, really hard to have a lot of value hands. And yeah, let's see what happened, because this is the most interesting part of this hand.
Yeah, so Ivey, I mean, usually you'd expect him to just snap fold here, but he's obviously thinking about it. Yeah. And yeah, it doesn't look like he wants to fold. Obviously, in game, if you're actually trying to play realistic ranges, there's just no way you could ever continue with this hand.
Yeah.
As we said, the only good property it has going for it is it has a backdoor club draw and it's got 1 over. But if you think about Ivey's range, how many better hands he has to call? He's got club draws, 10x, overpairs. He should have some 5x. Like, he has so many better hands, but this just goes to
even
show,
like ace king, ace queen, right? When you think your opponent is way off.
Yeah.
But queen 4, probably not. But yeah, he makes the call.
Yeah, and the turn is the 8. I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm just going back to his call too. This is just a good example of, I mean, even though this hand's only 10 years old, I think back, like say even before this, like whatever, early 2000s or whenever, before we started playing, I think there was a lot more of this going on, right? Where it's just like really, really good, like live reads versus the player, right? Where you don't give a shit about your hand basically. And this just kind of goes to show this is exactly what Ivey's doing here. He was going like way outside the box. A play that, against most people is going to be super highly unprofitable, but who knows, maybe he had a good live read. Maybe he just picked up that the guy just never really has a value hand here, which is, as we said, is kind of the case. He shouldn't have too many 5x, and there's not too many value hands he can have. So I guess he just kind of saw through his bluff here and decided to float ridiculously wide.
Yeah, and also the problem is when your opponent bluffs again, you can still not call with queen 4, right? Even when Feldman is pulling the trigger, he rips it in on the turn, or even bet small. There's nothing you can do. But let's see what happened.
So yeah, so Feldman just gives up pretty fast too, right? So I guess it was just like a one play, or one street play, and then he has to give up, which goes to show that's why you don't really want to raise a hand like king queen of diamonds here, because there's just so few turns you can continue with. Like the only really good turn would be a jack. Obviously, a king or a queen are okay, but the only really good turn to give you more equity again without hitting a pair would be the jack. So yeah, it's just much better to do with clubs or something. And yeah, he waves a white flag, so it's on Ivey now. What do you think he should do here once Feldman's checked?
Yeah, I mean, this was his plan, so now he should definitely take advantage and start betting, because he has some value hands in his range. Of course, he has overpairs, he has a 5, he has all the strong hands, so yeah, he can definitely bet small now to also value bet, protection bet, middling hands when he has a hand like, yeah, queen 10 and stuff like that. So he definitely should not go all in or something like this. This would be way too polarized.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Feldman checks. He's pretty defeated there. Didn't quite work. And then Ivey puts in the bet here. So I like his bet sizing too. It's about a third pot. I mean, he could probably realistically,
27K.
he could probably even go smaller realistically. Like if he thinks that Feldman is just either has like absolutely nothing or a monster, he could probably even go something like 20K. But I definitely like the small sizing, which is, I would definitely recommend doing this in game a lot too. It works really well. If you think your opponent's check raising pretty wide, and then you float, just put a lot of small bets on the turn, you're going to find it works really well against most of the population, because it's just really hard to defend, right? From Feldman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't do anything about it.
You got a lot of board textures when you feel your opponent is over bluffing, so you're floating a bit wider, like you mentioned. You don't need to size up on the turn when his calling range is pretty inelastic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, after Ivey bets the small sizing, Feldman is basically forced to fold. Nothing you can do about it. And yeah, street poker for sure. Pretty interesting hand, I think. And obviously, people love this. The viewers love this shit. Obviously, saying the Feldman got super owned, but it's just, it's pretty interesting because, both players trying to play aggressively and kind of disregard for the cards. And obviously Ivey won, and it's kind of, I guess it's also, you have to have a decent amount of disregard for the money, right, to go float that ridiculously wide and then go for the bet. And then you just put yourself, if he knows that Feldman maybe cares about the money too much, he just puts him in such a tough spot. So definitely pretty interesting hand.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, like you mentioned, from back in the days, you have so many hands like that because people were not thinking about optimal ranges and which hands you can defend.
Yeah.
They are just super often thinking, is my opponent having too many bluffs, so I just float with any 2 or 4-bet any 2, something like this. And as we know today, this is not the best idea when your opponent is still somewhat balanced. You just exploit yourself. But back in the days, this was possible because no one had a somewhat good counter strategy. So you can definitely get away with some plays like this. And especially live, when you have some reads, like you mentioned, someone is scared money or is playing too tight, too loose in some situations, overfolding in some positions. No one will just re-exploit you. So definitely something you could take some advantage on back in the days, but nothing we advise today. You should stick more to our ranges from the Mastering Live cash game course.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, good hand. Interesting to see, and then we'll try to find some other hands like this to review. It's pretty interesting, I think, to have a look back and just talk about them. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, see ya. Bye.
Later.